Now brace yourself for this, because this really affects you and it's really not good news. Do you know that we could possibly be at work for up to 40 years of our lives? And if this is the case, you're going to spend the majority of your time with the people in your workplace. Sure. So how well do you get along with the people at work? Do you like the people you work with? Do you understand them? Today we're going to be looking at a personality tool called DISC. This tool offers insights into workplace behaviours, and it will help you understand your colleagues better, and it will help you to foster a harmonious work environment. It's important knowledge. After all, you don't have to like everyone that you work with, but you do need to get along with these people. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Today's guest is Kate Russell. Kate helps unravel workplace conflict through team and leadership development. She works with leaders and teams to build high levels of trust, communicate effectively, and reduce stress, both personal and team stress, in order to create safe and dynamic workplaces. She uses her mediation skills and deep understanding of people's different communication and behavioural styles to assist leaders and teams to have more empathy with each other, so they're better equipped to manage the day-to-day stresses of their industry. Kate's business, The Huddle, takes a holistic strength-based approach to reducing team and individual stress and maximising outcomes by creating programs that specifically meet the needs of the team. Hi Kate, it's great to have you back. In our last episode, we discussed conflict, and in particular conflict in the workplace. Now, as you and I know, there are often very different personality people in the workplace and that are involved in conflict. So today, you and I are going to talk about temperaments and a particular personality tool that you have done, which is called DISC. So, sorry, I haven't even allowed you time to talk.
That's all right. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Back. I love it.
That's a pleasure. By the way, listeners, when Kate and I talk, there's not much airspace in between the pair of us, so this is all good. This is all good. We have a great time. So
we do.
Can you provide just a brief overview of what DISC profiling is about and what it looks at and the letters that are involved?
Yes, absolutely. So DISC is a fabulous tool that that I use quite a lot, that is based on Jungian psychology, which I think all of the behavioural styles, are based on. So I don't think that there's any great difference between them. They're just sort of levels of complexity or, the depth with which they go into. But yes, so DISC is a really valuable behavioural tool assessment tool, which that people can do online, basically just through a survey, and it provides some really valuable information about their normal response to various situations. And so there are 4 basic styles, which is dominant, influencer, steadiness or security, and compliance. And we all have all of that in us. You might be dominant in 1 or 2 of these, but we do have access to all of these styles when we need them, and we sometimes call upon those. And dominant is as it sounds. So it's people who are dominant. They tend to like to have control. They're very direct, and they like to get things done. And they basically their thing that motivates them is to be successful. So they are very, very keen to get things done and to do that well and to tick a box and be successful. Influence is they're much more people focused. They are optimistic, social beings, social butterflies who are very much like the cheerleaders in a group. Yes, you and I. Yeah, cheerleaders in the group can have a little bit of shiny object syndrome. Very sociable and very much driven by experience, wanting to have a good experience and wanting other people to have a good experience. So COVID was terrible because we weren't having enough good experiences. That was terrible. Steadiness or security is about people wanting safety, and these tend to be people that go sort of the energy levels are a bit lower in the sense of that they are much calmer. They're not sort of as manic as us high Is and Ds can be. And they need time to process information and things. They tend to be the nurturers of the group. And I always think that they have something on their forehead which says, tell me everything, because they are calm and trustworthy. And so people very much feel comfortable to tell people those things. They're driven by a need for safety. And that's really interesting because in order to feel safe, they can sometimes then behave in a manner which is flying under the radar, not trying to attract attention to themselves, but they can get frustrated because they don't always speak up to say what's worrying them, but then can get frustrated that things are worrying them. So there's a challenge there. Every style has a challenge. And then compliance is the high Cs, and again, task-focused, tend to be accurate focused. They want things to be right and accurate, and they're logical and precise. And they can sometimes come across as quite blunt because they are so task-focused. And they're driven by a fear of failure because they're spending a lot of energy on being accurate and being right. And therefore, if they're not accurate, if somebody criticizes them, they can be very triggered by that because they are investing a lot of energy. So every style, as I say, has extraordinary benefits and positives, but every style also has some challenges that they're dealing with. And it's really interesting. The high Ds, who sort of get the decision makers who like to get control and make things happen and can go quite fast, they often are described as not being caring. The team can often say you don't care because all you're focused on is the bottom line or winning or whatever. And yet I know for a fact that that's not true. So that they do care, but they don't always demonstrate that. So that's sort of a very, very basic overview of them, but it's just a fabulous way of sort of understanding where do we sit, where does our energy lie.
And it's a fabulous look at behaviours too. And because a lot of the time, the thing about all of these personality tools and the MBTI and DISC and the 5 personalities and all that, is it helps people identify things that they never even thought about.
Absolutely.
For the normal person, this is another thing I say, going through school, if people learned about themselves and did this kind of work in a school environment and then had an understanding of people, just a basic understanding of who you are and how different people can operate and temperament-wise. And so it just makes such a difference. So what when we talk about this too, and we talk about being different, you can be a combination of certain temperaments. I often say the D and the C, so I use the choleric and the phlegmatic, so I use the Hippocrates kind of terms, are often, no, not the D and the C, the D and the S, the steady and the D, are very rarely a combination because one of them's so highly driven, the other one's so steady, that to have a highly driven, steady person actually, well, I haven't seen it yet, but it's often, have you? What's it like? What does it look like?
Yeah, so I know a general manager of a local council whose DISC came back as a high SD, and it's sort of like, whoa. It is really interesting. Because the high D is a risk taker and the high S is risk averse, and I'd say that the D dominated more, even though he was very high in the S, but the D took over. But he was probably a diluted D.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess
he could go full D sometimes. Yeah.
Because it is really interesting. So are Ds usually leaders in organisations, or
they are?
Does the influence? Yeah.
I think they are often leaders.
Yes.
They. I think we did a workshop in that local council because there were 3 Ds in leadership roles, and they were just at loggerheads all the time trying to work out who was the boss. And even though the general manager was the boss, there was just this,
everybody
D
wants to be the boss.
And so And they had to work out some ground rules about how they were going to work together and how they had to have some boundaries, because otherwise, because they had their subject matter expertise and then there was the boss. And it's like, how are we going to make this work? Because they ended up having really quite, full-on conflict at times, because they cared deeply, because they really, really wanted great outcomes, but they just didn't know how to play in the sandpit together.
And they don't know, and a D does not want anyone to tell them what to do either. It's often, no, because it's my husband's high D and it's his way or the highway quite often, but they can be taught. So this is the thing about this, people can be taught to recognize those things about themselves. I would say that possibly the D or the choleric is the least likely to listen really well if it's a straight D, because they know what's the right thing. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. I find the Ds if they want to be successful, so I have found that they will take feedback the best, in that if you say to a D, that's too intense, or I'm feeling like you're going too fast or whatever, they'll go, oh, okay, sorry, because they want to be successful, and they are less likely than any of the other styles to take that personally and be emotionally triggered, because it's just a piece of information that's really valuable that will help them be successful. Whereas everybody else, the high I's, like social interaction, are terrified of social rejection. It's like, oh, so don't criticize me, you don't like me, so that's a problem. The high S's is like, well, now it's not safe because I've made a mistake or something hasn't gone well, and I'm really, really uncomfortable, I'm not feeling safe. And the high C's don't want to be criticized because that means that I haven't been perfect enough. So, I'm trying so hard to be right and get this accurate, and now that's not true. And so I think the language of yes and going with people is a really useful tool regardless, because that way we're not having to step on toes when we're giving people feedback when we see something that is uncomfortable, because we all end up behaving in a manner that can make other people feel uncomfortable unintentionally.
Yeah, I know. And you and I bowl in and overwhelm people quite often.
Yes.
Because
we're a lot.
That's right, we are, and we're so full on. And my daughter told me off once on reception when we had indoor swim schools, and I was on reception. Everyone that walks in the door, I'm hello, how are you? Boom, boom. And she said to me, Mum, just come down a little, okay? Because she said, seriously, some of these people, they look like they want to run straight past you because you're just overwhelming. So, the importance of knowing and understanding yourself is really, really good. And I didn't take that negatively. I looked at it and thought, yes, Kate, that's the truth. You talk about this stuff all the time. but it is knowing that in the workplace.
Yeah.
How do you see this, this instrument working its best in the workplace?
Look, it is. I think it is just a fabulous tool. I use it a lot in conflict resolution because often it can be an aha moment where people will go, "Oh, is it that simple? Is that is that part of the challenge that I'm going fast and you want things to slow down a lot and you need time to process, and I'm frustrated because I don't want you to take that long," or vice versa. So it can be really useful for that. It's been very useful for people to, even if they say this isn't accurate, I don't particularly care. It's more about that conversation with self about how do I react to stress, and what does it look like when I'm in a conflict situation, and do I go fast, and am I risk averse, or do I take risks? It helps them sort of become aware of that. So then I use it for teams when we're thinking about how do we reduce stress. I think, well, how would we like to communicate with each other? And we just go around the group and have a conversation. And it's like, I like dot points in my email. I'd like you to have a conversation with me. I need lots of detail. And so we just, we treat people the way they want to be treated rather than treat people the way you want to be treated. And that tends to get better outcomes. And you can have conversations that you might have not had before because you just go, oh, that's petty and that's not important, when in fact it is important. If you give me a long email with lots of detail and no headings, I probably won't read it. I'll probably ask somebody else to read it and tell me what it is and give me the dot points, because I go fast. I'm just always going fast, and I find it hard in an email form to get that information, whereas somebody else really wants all the information and they don't want to have a conversation until they've got the information. So it can just reduce stress and save time if we have those conversations.
What was that question again, Kate? Tell me the question again, just so that we can listen again. Cause I was concentrating on the question and I thought, that was a great question. Now I can't remember it. Nothing wrong with me. So the question you would ask your group, what would it be?
Is how would we like to be communicated with? Like, I'll tell you what's my preferred style of communication, so that when you are working with me, you can get me operating quickly straight away. And so what I find is that then it helps people then think about, well, what's our decision-making process? Well, some of us are going to go really fast and some of us need more time to process. So how can we set up our meetings so that the people who need more time have got the information ahead of their meeting, so that when we get there, we've made an agreement, we're going to make a decision, and it's up to everybody to be prepared. Whereas I'm very happy to make decisions on the day, but usually it's not the best decision because I actually haven't
thought about it.
So it's about how you do that. But the other thing that I use it for is in the decision-making process is to use those drivers to think about, as a team, how do we want to go ahead and make sure that, one, we're successful, two, that people have a good experience, three, that they feel safe, and four, that we're compliant. And if we tick all of those boxes in the way in which we conduct ourselves and our processes and the like, then we're probably meeting everybody's needs and nobody will get left behind. And I just think that's such a simple tool for teams in their decision-making thinking. And so I love DISC. And when people say, this isn't me, I go, fine, tell me who you are. Like, tell me more. I'm keen to learn more about you. But it gets people thinking in a way that they would not normally think about at all.
It does. And there are always people that question these instruments. You know, there's always the questioner, and that's great because their questions are often really good questions. And sure, everything isn't perfect and isn't right and isn't exact, and that's okay. And that's okay. But this is, you know, and the thing about the leader as well, is that they like also to know that they are doing a good job and they are getting the best out of their staff. My brother is very much, well, no, he's not. But when he's in the role of a manager, I don't know that he's a high D, but he used to say to me, I like this stuff because he said what it does for me is it helps me understand my staff. So they work better and I get more out of them. And there's my results because it works if it works that way, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the point you just made there is really important too, that in DISC they will give you two scores. So they'll give you your natural style and your adapted style. And we do often adapt our style for the workplace because we have to fill the gaps, because every team will, you know, if we're all the same style, we need somebody who's going to be a decision maker. We need the cheer squad. You know, we need the nurturer and we need the compliance person. So we adapt our behaviours to meet the needs of the group. It's just that I'm aware that when people are very, adapt their behaviour a lot, that it can be quite exhausting to behave in a manner that's not your normal style. But I think that it is really, really valuable to be aware of that. And then you can see somebody's behaviour. And again, we make assumptions about that behaviour. But then if we have some awareness that somebody might be struggling with not wanting to be criticised because they're spending so much time, and so you can thank them for the energy that they put into making things right, and see their style as the way they want to be seen, which is, you know, thank you so much for all your hard work, because that then makes it so much easier to say thank you for that. And the next thing is we need to focus on this. So again, go with people, go with their strengths, play to their strengths, and then people just feel seen in a way that they wouldn't be seen. Like saying to an influencer, thanks for your hard work, it's like, that's great, but really see me for the fact that I have created a party.
That's right. Give me a bit of personal around that.
That's
I
right.
want to know you have been amazing. What a great, you've just done this and that. Oh, no. I was listening to some lady on a podcast the other day and she was talking about being a kindergarten teacher, and the person said to her, oh, I bet you were really good. She said, I was amazing. Everybody loved me. And I thought, yes, that's right. Absolutely. Of course you were.
Go
Go on.
No, I got some feedback the other day where somebody said that session was quite good. I'm going, oh, quite.
My husband said that about dinner last night, and I said, quite. Quite's not a word. Is it good or is it amazing?
That's right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know. So let's talk about the problems with being an influencer. Is that we really don't find personal criticism quite hard, don't we?
We do. Well, because we see it as social rejection, even though it's not. It's like I have to remind myself, I'm an adult, and just because that person's not looking at me doesn't mean that they don't like me anymore.
And just because they're moving away because I'm too noisy doesn't mean they don't like me.
And if they don't like me, that's okay too.
That's right. Yeah. We'll live with that. There's plenty more friends out there. So when we talk about the S, we're in the disc, and the problem. So in the workplace, what we find with them is that that, like we say, they're steady. I actually did a podcast about the phlegmatic, which is the S, just recently, and the S is steady, and you never know what's going on in their head because they are so steady. Then all of a sudden, they're stubborn, they dig their heels in, they get really defensive, they can get quite, people call it passive-aggressive, and you look at them and you think, oh my goodness, I don't know what's gone wrong here. And unpacking them is quite hard because they won't give a lot. So how do you find it's easiest to unpack that person?
So the highest is that you've explained that beautifully, that's definitely my experience, is time, because they need time to process things. And so asking, I do a lot of work when I do workshops. I get people to write things down a lot so that we hear every voice, because the high D's and I's will usually dominate all of the conversation, and then we don't hear other people. But the other thing to be aware of is that the high S's will not speak up unless they feel safe. And I often think of Homer Simpson, in The Simpsons, when that meme of him going into the hedge. And so I think that they're known when they're stressed to withdraw, and then they go into their head. Or sometimes they stay home for days on time, or, they can truly withdraw, and they won't come out unless they feel safe. And so that's why I've always found really getting to know them to slow everything down, have the coffee, build the rapport, make it as safe as possible so that they can feel comfortable to tell me what's going on. I'm married to a high S, and there'll be times when he gets very stressed and I want to go and give him a big hug and all of that, and his body goes tense, and it's like I need to be by myself now because I'm feeling stressed, rather than have you come and fix me or, make me better. And so I have to respect that people need time and space when they are feeling very, very stressed. And it's also sometimes working out who do they feel safe with. So they might not, so that DS dynamic, that's where I do a lot of, conflict resolution. They don't always feel safe with somebody who's very dominant and loud and very fast at making decisions and has this way of consulting, which is like, what do you all think? Right, no complaints? Great. And
that's my husband.
As soon as you've had a fast decision made, you can pretty much be confident that the S's in the room have not spoken out because it's too scary, it's not safe to speak up, but they're not happy, and it will come back and haunt everybody down the track. So let's slow this down and think about our decision-making process so that we are really inclusive up front and we create forums where people have a voice. So, and again, getting people to write things down, or getting, and you can do it online or in person, but putting people in pairs to have a conversation about an issue rather than having to hear every individual voice. Because when you do that, it's much safer, because that person you've buddied with now has your back. And so now it's safer to speak up because it's not just you. So yeah, I find tools like that are the way in which I work with highesters in a group, because they have so much to offer, but they often don't say anything because they don't want to rock the boat. But I have seen highesters in leadership, and I've seen highesters in groups where they do feel safe and they're dynamic. but
they're wonderful leaders because
they're
they
wonderful
are
leaders.
steady, and if they listen to people,
Absolutely.
But like you say, the D and the S. My husband loves the S until they don't do what he wants them to do because they're not moving fast enough. But we've had plenty of work around this, so we all get each other in the workplace. But it is, and I can understand the stress that it must cause. So tell us about the C, because go.
So the high C is really interesting because they know their stuff really well. So it's really interesting. Like the high I's, the two talkers of the group are the high I's and the high C's. And the high I's talk about fun social stuff, and the high C's will tell you things that they know. And so I could always predict somebody who talks a lot. You're one or the other. And high C's, though, in a workplace, their challenge is because they do want accuracy, and they often work in areas because that's their skill set. They are often in roles and they're attracted to work that requires that. So they're in IT and accounting and engineering and the like because that's where their skill set lies. And then it's about how do we finish a project, because we can sometimes get stuck in perfect. And that can be a challenge. And so, I've done some work with an organisation where the new university students take some time to adjust from getting rewarded for perfect at uni and suddenly going into a commercial environment where we need 80%, not 110%, because if we can't actually function if everybody's operating at 110% because it slows things down too much. So there's those challenges, and that's why, again, thinking about how do we set this up for success and how do we ensure that people have really clear expectations and boundaries so that they feel okay about letting go of their work at 80 or 90% and not 110. And then it's thinking about...
Most of them don't, Kate. Most of them will never feel that, right? But yes.
No, they don't, but they do find a workaround, or they're prepared to work longer hours to achieve the outcome because they want it. They're very important in a group. They're very important in any team because you need people that are not high I's. You need people who are going to be compliant and make sure we abide by the rules, even if people don't like it. Rules are important. And I find that high C's, because they don't take criticism well, that's sometimes a challenge in giving feedback. And so then again, it's thanking people for their hard work and going with them and using the word and rather than but, to assist them to think about what do we want rather than this is a criticism and don't do that again. So it's thank you for all your hard work. This is fabulous. I love what you've done here. And we've also got to think about this. Can we add that to what we're putting into this project? And I've been thinking about this other piece and I'm not sure it should go there. What do you think? So it's not a criticism. It's let's have a discussion. And I want to tap into your expertise, but you've still got to manage that conversation so that you don't get stuck back in the weeds. Because and that's why this can be really valuable. And it's a challenge though in workplaces because the C's can take over a conversation and dominate it because they're telling you all of the things. And you've got to have some ground rules around how we're going to work together so that we use the meeting times for really practical stuff and we have those other conversations away from the meeting so that we don't get caught up in the weeds in meeting times. Yeah.
There is so much in all of this, isn't there? It's massive. And once you understand people and you sit and watch it, it's extraordinary. And you just go, oh my goodness. I mean, I use it like personally much. I use it in the business place as well, but I use it personally. And that's what, when you're talking about work and personal, I think people do need to understand too, like you're saying, that if you're feeling really stressed in your job, often doing a tool like this is really great because you may be, I talk about when I had to do the wages years ago, someone locked me away in a room and I had to do wages for 40 people and I overtaxed them all. And I came out and said to my husband, I'm never doing this again because this is not me. I'm a front desk girl, don't. So knowing and understanding what your stresses are is really important. And often people come up to me after working in this type of area and say, I'm in the wrong job, I'm getting out. Because the thing is that they're working against their natural personality preferences and type, and they've suddenly go, this is why I'm stressed, So it is a really fabulous tool. I mean, there's just so much more that we can talk about, but we haven't got time today. So thank you so much. Can you give me 3 more things again? And can we have the and in there too? So, because I love that. I haven't heard about the and, so go.
Okay, look, my 3 top tips would be yes and. It is a fabulous tool. They use it. It's in theatre a lot. Like it's a great way to think outside the square, but go yes and go with people, because then they feel seen and heard, and you'll get better outcomes. The thing is, don't make assumptions though. When you're in this space, don't make assumptions that somebody's going to behave a certain way or hold them like, oh, you did this because. Like, it's play to people's strengths rather than use it as a weapon against them. It's not a judgment tool. It's just a really valuable tool that's going to help with communication. And be mindful of that when somebody's really stressed, they're usually an extension of that behaviour is an exaggerated sense of whatever they're going through in that moment. And so, again, don't be judgmental about that. It's just giving you some really valuable information about whatever is going on for that person. So you're going to see behaviours which demonstrate whether they're a D, I, S or C, and just go, that person's really stressed. How can I support them in this moment, rather than take that personally, because it's not personal.
And even if you can't do it intuitively, which Kate is very intuitive and I'm not, and even if you can't do it intuitively, there's plenty of stuff to read up about those people to understand how to handle them and how to acknowledge and understand their strengths. And there's just an enormous amount of information out there once you know about it. So, Kate, thanks again for a wonderful podcast. And there's so much in here that people will be able to unpack and use, I'm sure.
Fabulous. Thank you for having me.
Isn't it fascinating how diverse people are? What temperament do you think you are in the workplace? Understanding these personality tools gives you many insights into yourself and others, such as self-awareness, career development, leadership effectiveness, and how you resolve conflict. Check out my previous podcasts. They offer insights into understanding people's temperaments in both professional and personal areas in life. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you did enjoy this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.